The global suspension of sporting activity is now a harsh reality. Athletes are turning to innovation to maintain fitness pending the return to action. Tonight's sports scene is dedicated to the creativity African sporting talent is using to overcome challenges posed by the coronavirus pandemic. Hello and welcome to your weekly sports program that brings you all the sporting news and reviews from an African perspective. We will highlight the thrill of victory while also showing you the agony of defeat. I'm Richard Nta in Nairobi. This is Sports Scene. Let's get real, let's get live, let's get at it. Here's what's coming up in the show. Kenya's Rugby 7 players use innovation to cope with the COVID-19 lockdown. And some lucky Egypt Olympic athletes training at home despite suspension of sporting activity. Once again, welcome to Sports Scene. The world of sport has ground to a halt as a result of the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic. Football leagues around the world have put their seasons on hold until further notice, with the exception of Belgium, where Percy Tau's clubs Bruges were crowned champions. However, in South Africa, a lot of uncertainty remains as to what happens next. CGT and CS Duplessis has more.
The Premier Soccer League came to an abrupt stop after the PSL chairman, Dr. Ivan Khoza's announcement on March 19th, stating that until the green light from the South African government, no football activities would take place, leaving the league's conclusion up in the air and the players in limbo.
In terms of longevity in the game, for sure, the football laws are going to have to be rewritten, and that's probably across all sports. So very uncertain times. We don't know what's happening tomorrow, and we don't know what's going to be happening in the future competitions. We've still got cups to go on in the South African Premier League. We've still got the league to be finished, so very, very interesting times ahead.
Roberts, a former goalkeeper for clubs like Crystal Palace, Mamelodi Sundowns and Ajax Cape Town, has told his players to use the time of lockdown wisely and to improve themselves.
It's a time to sit, it's a time to reflect, it's a time to go within and see where we as individuals can improve ourselves. And I've told the boys as well is that you may not be the most talented of players, but there's nothing stopping you from coming back now to their mini pre-season as the fittest. So I hope they're going to take that on board now and really, really work on themselves going forward.
With European clubs discussing reducing players' wages, Roberts says it's tough for South African clubs who aren't in the financial position of Kaizer Chiefs, Orlando Pirates and Mamelodi Sundowns to follow suit.
I think it'll be very tough for players or teams to implement a wage cut going forward because of the coronavirus. I honestly can't see that happening, to be honest. I just don't think the majority of players outside the top 5 or top 6 teams could actually afford it. Nothing's been put in place from the top, from the PSL. There's no savings plan in place for these guys. So now you can't expect them to all of a sudden take wage cuts.
The conclusion of the season remains a big topic of debate, but so is the idea of matches behind closed doors, a scenario that is not ideal, especially for the football fans who flock to stadiums week in and week out.
We don't want the games to be played behind closed doors because there's just no game feel. The sponsors won't be getting their bang for the buck. The players won't feel like they're playing for, anything worthwhile, if that's fair to say. But it might come that we have no choice for the games to be played behind closed doors.
There's no doubt that football will be forever affected, be it financially, the way fans watch the game, or the way players interact. Who knows? One thing is for sure though, the sport that offers hope to millions with each fixture will return. Maybe not anytime soon, but it will return and will once again capture the imagination of fans all over the globe who sorely miss the beautiful game. CS Duplessis, CGTN, Johannesburg.
The Tunisian Football Federation has opted to send out online training manuals to the country's players who are under lockdown due to the coronavirus pandemic. Others have opted for innovative ways to keep fit, as CGTN's Adnan Shawashi now reports.
Hicham Rosé is the fitness trainer of the national football team. The Tunisian Football Federation has opted for online training and live fitness sessions to ensure that all athletes are safe during the coronavirus pandemic.
Professional footballers usually train every day and play up to 2 matches per week. stopping training suddenly impacts the muscles and nervous system. That's why we are providing online assistance and sports activity during the general lockdown.
Some football players continue their training in parks and forests while respecting the social distancing measure to prevent the spread of the virus.
We stayed at home in the first weeks of the lockdown because the virus is deadly, but any professional footballer earns a living by remaining fit. That's why we must adapt, run and play in nature and respect the prevention measures.
The domestic league was interrupted and it will not resume anytime soon. We follow the coach and fitness trainer's recommendations and train every day until the end of this international crisis.
Tunisian international football referees insist on respecting the prevention measures imposed by the state, the Ministry of Youth and Sports, as well as the Tunisian Football Federation.
COVID-19 has caused this period of no sports. Sports activities cannot respect social distancing. Consequently, we're forced to stop all meetings and tournaments. This is the only way to fight coronavirus until a vaccine or a treatment is found.
Experts assert that virtual training of football players and athletes in general has dominated social networks during COVID-19 shutdown. Many Tunisian players in foreign teams have called for their immediate repatriation. The Tunisian Football Federation has urged the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to authorize the National Career Tunisair to repatriate many Tunisian players, coaches and doctors residing in Saudi Arabia as soon as possible. The returnees have affirmed that they will sign the commitment to comply with the quarantine measures. Adnan Shawashi, CGTN, Tunis.
And we cross over to West Africa. It's a tough time for football fans in Nigeria, where the game is the most popular among every other sport. Now, with all sporting activities across the world suspended as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, both fans and players of football in Nigeria say they miss the game a lot. CGTN's Deji Badmus has more.
Nothing better reflects the impact of COVID-19 on sports in this country than this locked stadium. It's a national stadium in Lagos and has been under lock for the past 3 weeks now, and there's no sign that it's going to be reopened in the coming days or weeks. There's nothing anyone can do about it, even though sports lovers do not like it. Safety actually comes first, at least before sports.
The stadium was shut just days after Nigeria recorded its first case of the coronavirus pandemic. And shortly after that, other stadiums in the country were shut as well, and a blanket suspension was placed on all sports. In a country where football is the predominant sport and many look forward to weekends of football games, especially from the foreign leagues, fans of the game are in disbelief that they've been able to go on for weeks now without any game, even in the local league.
I miss football a lot, like really a lot, most especially this lockdown period. I would have personally been watching football every weekend and all of that, but now there's nothing to watch. Somebody just go home, is bored, nothing at all.
Over the weekends, you have early kickoffs from like 12:30 to around 8:30 in the night. You still find yourself very much glued to the TV set watching this game. So for me, it's not just a game. It's something personal now.
Trying to stay in shape. Abu Aziz and Omoyele Tosin both play football for two club sides in the Nigeria Premier League. They've been home now for the past 2 weeks since the domestic league was suspended because of the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic in Nigeria. They say they can't wait to get back.
We think it's a joke. It's something that we'll just go home for 1 week, then we'll go back to our various team. But since we realize the team is getting worse, something like that, as a footballer, we have passion, it's our job. It's something that we have been doing for a living.
While they keep in shape and weight, there's no certainty for now when the league would resume so they could go back to their clubs. But fans and players are not the only ones affected by the suspension of football globally.
At this time of the weekend, this viewing center would have been jammed with football fans watching football matches. But unfortunately, since football was suspended virtually across the world as a result of COVID-19, viewing centers like this across Nigeria have taken a big hit. It's bad business for those who are operating them.
The business has really been bad, huh? And Edwin Onogewe is one of them. He says his viewing centre has not been operational since the suspension of football and the lockdown in the country, and he's had nothing else to do.
There's no league, so there's nothing I could do. I could just, I'm just surviving, somehow. I know I'm surviving.
For those who put their money where their heart is, let's say betting, there's no game to bet on, so money is not coming in. For those who own those very small shops also, like agents to these betting guys, the shops are locked up.
It's indeed a tough time for football-loving Nigerians. But for as long as COVID-19 continues to ravage the world, the longer they'll continue to wait for the game they love so much. Deji Badmos, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
And Sports Scene continues with a lot more. Stay tuned. Here's what's ahead. Kenya Rugby 7 players use innovation to cope with the COVID-19 lockdown.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Kanata, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Welcome back. The World Rugby 7 Series is one of the many sporting competitions affected by the global lockdown due to the coronavirus pandemic. With 4 legs remaining in the season series and Kenya on a sporting lockdown, the country's national team players have to be innovative to remain fit, as CGTN's Mohammed Abubakar reports.
The Kenya Rugby Sevens team observed a mandatory 14-day self-quarantine period from mid-March after returning from their North America tour of the World 7 Series. Upon completion, the side hasn't yet resumed normal training. The rapid spread of the novel coronavirus in Kenya has prompted a government directive that all public sporting facilities be closed down indefinitely. Despite the lockdown, Shujaa captain Andrew Amonde says the team has had to find alternative ways of keeping fit while staying at home.
Our preparation at home has been different. We have tried to learn different kind of training techniques to be able to keep our fitness, just get our blood pumping and our fitness level to be at a certain level. It's not been easy to staying at home because being a sportsman, you're used to moving and using the facilities. Most of them have been closed down. So it has taken us time to just adjust to the environment and to be able to get the best of what we can do.
For some like Willie Ambaka, the lockdown has come at a favorable time, giving him ample opportunity to recover from an injury he sustained in Los Angeles last month.
Personally, I got injured in Los Angeles, so I've just been recovering from that, but also try to watch my diet and just do a few exercises that I think will just keep me in shape, because I think anything can happen in the next few weeks, so we just have to try as much as possible to stay fit and keeping healthy.
Following the cancellation of the Kenyan rugby season and the postponement of the World 7 Series and the Summer Olympic Games, it leaves the Shujaas in a difficult position as they hope to turn to domestic rugby for the much-needed game time. The Kenya national rugby team still gets to keep their Tokyo 2020 ticket for the games next summer. However, the concern for the current crop of players is the challenge to remain at the top of their game for another 12 months in order to keep their place in the team.
My disappointment comes when I think about the athletes. I think about the sacrifices that they've made to qualify and be ready for the Olympics. Many of them were working with the July date in mind, but unfortunately this has been pushed back by 12 months and it really throws them off balance, probably because time is not on their side, especially for the older athletes, or they could fall sick, get injured, lose form and simply be out of contention for a place at the Olympics when it happens in 2021.
Kenya is currently placed 12th in the World Rugby 7 Series standings with 35 points after 6 legs, and like any other sporting entity on the planet, the team faces an uncertain future following the COVID-19 crisis. Mohamed Abubakar for CGTN, Nairobi.
And in South Africa, their national sevens team was just 11 points behind World Series leaders New Zealand with 4 tournaments to go when the COVID-19 pandemic brought their season to an abrupt halt. The remaining tournaments have been postponed until later this year. The pandemic has also put on hold the Olympic aspirations of the Blitzbokke, as the Olympics have now been rescheduled to take place in 2021. However, the players are in support of the postponement of the Olympics as well as the remaining 4th leg of the World 7 Series. The biggest challenge, though, for the players is keeping fit with the lockdown in place in the Rainbow Nation.
I support the decision to postpone the Olympic Games. I support it fully and I agree with it, solely because I think the bigger picture was taken into consideration, and that's the health and the lives of everyone in the whole world, not only just the athletes but also the people that were going to be involved and be part of the Olympic Games. So that's why I support it and that's why I agree with it fully. I'm doing home-based programs like bodyweight stuff just to make sure that I stay strong. It obviously won't be the same as going to the gym, but at least I'm not sitting around and doing nothing. There's some programs that we receive from our SNC and just some other running stuff that I'm making up as I go because of the limited space that I have in the yard, but I run around the yard as well just to keep my lungs going.
All right, let's talk more about the disruption of the World Rugby 7 Series season by the coronavirus pandemic. And from South Africa, CGTN's correspondent C.S. du Plessis joins us via Skype from Johannesburg, while here in Nairobi, CGTN's sport editor Sadiq Shaban joins me in the studio. Let's begin with you, CS. Thanks for joining us once again on Sports Scene. My first question is to you. Do we know if the South Africa Rugby Board will pay cut for players in the coming days? CS?
Good evening, Richard. Thanks for having me on. It's inevitable. It will be something that happens in the next few weeks. Negotiations are underway. As we understand with the players' union, which is my players, they've been speaking together as one collective voice about the negotiation, saying it's better that one sort of direct message, if you like, goes to SA Rugby, who have been in cost-cutting stance or measures, if I can put that way, for some time now, in anticipation of the impact of the pandemic that has hit global rugby. From what we're understanding is that the pay cut could be up to 45%, depending on the pay scale and the tax scale. Now, SA Rugby last year changed their contracting model. So now, instead of contracting their star players directly, it's their clubs, wherever it may be in the Northern Hemisphere, in the Southern Hemisphere, wherever they're playing, that pay them directly. So that has taken some of the financial burden away. But it will be a pay cut, in effect, that will possibly take place at the end of May if all negotiations go well. But it is something that is going to impact South African rugby. And SA Rugby are driving this. So it looks like there's a buy-in from the players. We'll have to wait and see exactly if it is that 45%. The big earners will obviously feel it more than the guys earning a lot less. But at this stage, it's inevitable that the South African rugby players will take a pay cut during this coronavirus pandemic.
All right, CS, thank you for that insight. Don't go away. We've got more questions coming your way. Sadiq, you get my next question. Now, Kenya's rugby players were recently in quarantine after returning to the country. What do we know about the situation?
Well, Richard, we have learned from both the Ministry of Health officials and the Rugby Federation itself that both the players and the management, members of the management team that took part in the 5th leg of the World Rugby 7 Series in Las Vegas and the 6th leg in Canada, Hamilton Sevens, well, I will say at this point in time, of course, they were in a two-week quarantine period that lapsed early last week, and Up to this point, we have reliably been informed that they are all okay. Of course, we knew that this was going to happen. All the Kenyan teams that came back into the country in the last four weeks were, told to self-quarantine. So all the players are okay. In fact, I've been speaking to some of them. They're in good health, in good spirits, and they're looking forward, in fact, to the time they're going to take back to, the pitch and train again.
All right, that's great news, and we hope the best for them. CS is right back to you. A question for you now. How did foreign-based South African rugby players get home before the lockdown in the country?
Well, Richard, it resembled something of a scrum, if you like, at Tokyo International Airport. We had several South African players who were involved in the top league tournament that was, after a little while, later cancelled. And because of the lockdown that allows no one to leave their home in South Africa just for essential goods or medical treatment, the South African players based in Japan had to scramble to get flights back, and eventually they all arrived on the 26th of March when that lockdown took place. Now, in Europe, South Africa has 358 players plying their trade in various leagues all over Europe, and the majority of them have made it back to South Africa. But what was quite interesting is that the Stormers in Cape Town had Wales international Jamie Roberts, the 33-year-old centre, playing Super Rugby for them. And he was just trying to decide whether or not he should leave, if he should stay in South Africa. And eventually he got one of the last flights out back to Wales, where now I believe he is working with the NHS to fight the COVID-19 pandemic. So a lot of players have made it back. Those who are based in Europe are quite happy and comfortable there in sort of self-isolation. A lot of other countries haven't got quite strict lockdown rules, but all those players from the Bulls, the Lions, the teams that were in Japan have gone through that 2-week sort of quarantine period and slowly getting used to the lockdown here in South Africa. But they had to scramble. They eventually got on flights, and the good news is they're back in South Africa and they're safe.
Again, we're happy that the players are healthy and happy. And Sadiq, you get my next question. How prudent was the Kenya Rugby Union to cancel the entire season due to the coronavirus pandemic?
Richard, the Kenya Rugby Union had no option really other than to cancel the entire season. They were just 6 weeks to the conclusion of the season. As you're aware, the government of Kenya placed a partial lockdown on the city of Nairobi. So the players could not travel out of Nairobi to own matches. Most of these teams are based outside Nairobi. So there was no way these teams are going to own matches out of Nairobi. And the teams that are out of the city, capital city, could not get in the country, into the capital city. So what it means, the cancellation, Richard, is that there will be no promotion and there will be no relegation next season. The entire season, after 16 rounds of matches, have now been iced. And so this means that this season, as it is, now we'll have to begin afresh when the time allows. This also means, Richard, now the cancellation means that the international tournament known as the Safari Sevens that was due sometime in October, November, has now been cancelled because the World Rugby calendar now, the 7 series that was supposed to be in Hong Kong has now moved to September. So this means that Kenya will have to really wait a long time, possibly until next year, to be able to begin afresh the season.
All right, Sadiq Shaban, I want to thank you for taking time joining us here on Sports Scene, and of course C.S. Duplessis in South Africa for bringing the knowledge, and of course Sadiq Shaban for breaking it all down for us. Gentlemen, thank both of you for being here on Sports Scene. Moving on, a rugby coach in Zimbabwe has come up with a creative way to make sure his players stay in shape during the lockdown, which has seen the suspension of all sports amid the COVID-19 crisis. CGTN's Brian Wakatuya brings us more from Harare.
Rugby players famously boast that they run and train in the sun or in the rain. Well, now they're having to do it during a lockdown. Zimbabwe under-18 sevens player Rukudzo Ndoro was meant to be on tour in South Africa, but instead he's going through his paces alone in the garden at home.
Yeah, I had to improvise since I don't really have equipment, so I just used the surroundings that I have, the plants and the lawn. So I just do the drills that I'm able to do with the environment that I have.
The rest of his teammates are doing the same with anything from old car tires to empty paint tins. It's all part of a challenge their coach came up with to channel their energies positively and keep them focused during the forced downtime.
The coaches and I sat down and we thought of something to keep them busy, and we put up an award for the best video produced by the players having their own personal training session at home. It's just basically them making use of whatever facilities they have, whatever space they have, and come up with anything creative to keep them rugby active.
It's each man for himself in this particular competition, but teamwork is still what these players, training in isolation, still crave the most.
The love of the rugby sport, it comes in numbers. You know, being many on the field is different from playing by yourself, passing the ball with your brother, or just doing drills. From something as simple as playing touch with your friends, it really makes the memories last.
With all sports suspended here indefinitely, players may still need to make do with plants, bushes and even trees as opponents. It's not the ideal, but it sure beats doing nothing. Farai Mwakutuya, CGTN, Harare, Zimbabwe.
With the Olympic Games postponed and major sports events canceled, many athletes face the challenge of keeping their physical fitness intact. In Egypt, athletes have been trying to get as creative as they can to keep fit. Here's CGTN's Adel El Mahroui with more.
Without domestic or international competitions, and now the Olympics getting postponed, all Egyptian athletes are improvising. In the COVID-19 sports age, the luckiest athletes are those whose sport can be practiced at home. Still, no one in Egypt has been prepared for that sudden shift.
إلغاء البطولات كان خبر صعب بالنسبة لي.
It was very difficult for me to hear about cancelling competitions. I have exerted a lot of effort and I paid a lot of expenses last season. I wanted to make some good throwing numbers.
عملت الرقم التأهيلي للأولمبياد.
Unfortunately now, no one has a chance of preparing well for such a big event. And also we're not having the chance of playing the competitions that could help us maintain or even improve our world ranking. So yeah, the preparation all in all, whether it's training or playing competitions and matches, is not going as it should be.
The outbreak has forced the sports community to quickly come up with solutions to overcome that barrier. Dina Mishrif is among the lucky athletes. She cannot train with her coaches, but at least she found a way to keep practicing her tactics at home.
For maintaining my physical fitness, my physical fitness coach, Captain Mohammed El Gamal, has given me some exercises that could be done at home. So I try to do them every day. And we have a table tennis table at home, so I often play with my brother.
Field sports athletes have been suffering the most. They can barely keep fit at home. More importantly, they don't have the opportunity to practice their sport.
أنا قاعد في البيت اشتريت شوية أجهزة جيم في البيت عندي.
I bought some gym gear at home. I try to practice at home as much as I can. I try to do some throwing trainings without throwing. This now applies to everyone. We try to do our best under the circumstances.
ويتحكم في اللي هو يقدر عليه.
Egyptian athletes are trying to come up with ways to go around the COVID-19 enforced limitations. The only way to get through that is by getting creative. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
Well, that's it for this edition of Sports Scene. Remember, you can send us your feedback to the contacts on the screen and follow us on digital media platforms. For the team, I'm Richard Surulanta saying thank you so much for watching, and we'll be right back here same time next week. Take care.